evening, everybody. Keith Engle here for TGI Sports Talks, college sports, mostly football. Huddle. Good to have you with us tonight. Sorry we're a minute late. I rush over here from the national streaming sports show every Wednesday night to start this show at 7. So 7:01, we're doing pretty good, I think. Anyway, great to have you guys with us. Want to welcome everybody watching us tonight on TGI Sports Talks feeds on Facebook, YouTube, X. I know it's not Twitter, X. This show will repeat tonight at midnight on the Northeast National Streaming Sports channel on Roku. Get those National Streaming Sports channel. It might look like Northeast Streaming Sports on Roku, just so you know. Get them downloaded. You can watch my show and a lot of great content all day and night long. It'll show tonight at 12 there, and again, we'll repeat it on Saturday morning. We're also on Northeast Streaming Sports YouTube feed. He's still having a bit of a problem with Facebook, which I'm well aware how that goes. They're still trying to scam me. There's scammers all over Facebook trying to get me to do something that will take my page down. I know it will. And also, Let's Talk Sports on their YouTube feed. Lots of great content there, too, as well. Quick shout out to Ralph Williams at RW Media. Ralph does some great stuff out of the Pittsburgh area. A lot of Pittsburgh-centric sports, but a lot of national focus as well. Specifically, the Sports Corner that he does with Smoke and Jim Frazier from 4 to 6 p.m. every Tuesday, Eastern time, every Tuesday on WBVP radio out of Pittsburgh. I'll be a guest there at 4:30 on the 14th of May, next Tuesday. And I do try to share it when Ralph gives it to me in a shareable format. I will share it on the TGI Sports Talk page as well. DDH, thumbs up. Don't want to forget you, my friend Dan Harris. We got with us so far tonight. Hello, Daniel Barry, Sports Highlights. How are you? Great to have you with us as always. Check out there. Where is your stuff, Daniel Barry? Just Facebook? Or you're coming from Facebook or YouTube? It looks like a YouTube feed to me. So check out Daniel Barry Sports Highlights on YouTube. If you've got other stuff you want to promote, you know, as I tell all the shows that come on here and say hi, pop in, put up a promo, and I will share it. And we'll share it to TGI Sports Talk as well. So welcome. Dave Guyette up in Amsterdam, New York. Good evening, Dave. Dave's our resident Syracuse fan. Syracuse had a big transfer come in, a defensive back this past week. So new coach, a lot of new players, a lot of transfers. Maybe things will move forward for the Syracuse Orangemen in the football on the football field this fall. We'll see how that goes. It's been a tough time for Syracuse since they went to the ACC, man. One of the worst things that ever happened to Northeast sports was the breakup of the Big East. Basketball and football. Steve Orpello up in Perth. How you doing, Steve? Steve was watching and commenting over on the national sports streaming shows or streaming sports show. Dave Guyette says the full NFL schedule comes out tomorrow. It does. Don't forget we're college focused here tonight, Dave. But yes, we talked about the NFL does a great job of marketing over there. Rick Sager up in Amsterdam, New York, or the town of Amsterdam, I guess, is Rick Sager doing some great stuff with still. What's your title now, Rick? I know Rick is retired, has been a great advocate for volunteer firefighting in Fort Johnson, New York for years. Grew up right near my grandparents' house. By the way, my grandparents' house sold, Rick. It's a beat up something terrible. My brother sent me pictures the other day. $120,000 up on Rochester Avenue there. Rochester Avenue, right? But Rick does some great work still with public safety in Montgomery County, and we are happy to say that. Plus a big supporter. He's also a big supporter of semi-pro football and in the Semi-Pro Football Hall of Fame. James Martin, how are you? James Martin was not on the show tonight. The previous show, as I mentioned, the National Streaming Sports Show. James not feeling well. Sonia not feeling well. I hope you're feeling better, James. We missed you over there. We'll check with you later. I hope you're feeling better, James. James has been a great addition to the network, and James is going to be doing more of his own stuff too, from what I heard. And I hope so. Excuse me. Good grief. That was rude. Good afternoon, Danny Fuller. Good afternoon to you. Good evening to me. And CA is with us as well. What are we going to talk about tonight, man? College sports starting to. There's stuff to talk about. I've got a ranking of the top 25 coaches, similar to what they did with teams. This was done on, I don't know if it was ESPN or The Athletic. We'll take a look at that. I can't read my own writing from today. I was so busy today. I was writing down some notes in the middle of a meeting I should have been paying closer attention to, probably. So anyway, news and notes. Is Notre Dame a top 5 team? We've looked at the top 25. We might take another quick look at a different ranking since the spring transfer portal. But is Notre Dame a top 5 team? I think they are. We've had some debate on this show about Marcus Freeman and how good a coach he actually is. I think we're just going to start to find out now whether he's a really good coach, which I think he is, or not. And I think Notre Dame is a potential top 5 team this year. We can talk about that. We can also talk about anything you guys want to. So this is just some primers. By the way, the colleges now, and I think it was UAB is the first to join this. The name of the organization is escaping me, but basically it's going to be an organization for college programs to join and have collective bargaining with the NCAA. Next step, natural, and in some ways it might be good to put some brakes on the transfer portal and people moving every year. Oh, God. We got a 28-year-old former Major League Baseball player looking to walk on at Arkansas this year. That'll be interesting. We'll look at the coaching hot seats. We got college baseball, which we'll be gearing up for. We'll look at least the top 25 and have some discussion there. But we can talk about anything you guys want to talk about in the world of college sports. See, now I lost my little. I had my top 25. Where'd it go? There it is. My top 25 coaches. We'll take a look at this. CA, LSU versus Alabama was a 14-inning thriller today. We're heading towards, and I don't think we're there yet, but very shortly here, in the next week or two, we'll be heading into the conference tournaments, which are going to determine all of the participants, the automatic qualifiers and the at-large participants in the College World Series. We'll get into the regionals, the super regionals, and finally, 8 teams will end up in Oklahoma City, which we always look forward to. Here's James Martin. Notre Dame is still an independent for sure. If it's so, does it benefit them or hurt them with all the changes in college football? It's an interesting question, James, and we've tackled it at various times over the last several years. And I've always been of the opinion that eventually, to be able to schedule, Notre Dame is going to have to join a conference. But now I'm second guessing my own thoughts there because, again, they've got, you'll say, well, if they join the Big Ten, they'd be getting, $60 million a year. I think the programs are getting per program from the new college football TV deal. Notre Dame is locked in at $25 million, at least for now, with NBC. But that's all theirs. But you've got to remember something else. Any bowl money, they go to the college football playoff. Any monies that are generated are theirs and theirs alone. Every other school that goes to any bowl game, including the college football playoff, has to share their monies with every team in their conference. This is why Notre Dame has never gone into a league. I mean, the TV money alone for a long time was more than even the SEC and the Big Ten were getting. The reason I think now they won't be joining a conference. And by the way, the ACC had them by the you-know-whats during the COVID season. Notre Dame could not put a schedule together. The ACC let them join. They're some kind of affiliated member of the ACC, right? They play 5 games a year against the ACC. They're almost a member school now. But they needed a conference to go to be able to schedule, and the ACC agreed to let them come in for one season. They had them. They could have said, no, you'll join full-time or you won't join at all. Back to the original question, James, I'm starting to think they'll hold out now. They won't join a conference until the next logical move, which is going to be to a super conference, and we're going to have however many teams it's going to be, 40, 60. It won't be 130, 40, 60, probably 60 will be tops. Maybe they'll go to 80. I don't know. And you're going to have regions. So we're going to get some semblance of regional football back and regional rivalries, potentially, when we're out west and we're in the southwest and we're in the northwest and we're in the midwest and we're in the east and the southwest. You'll have 6 or whatever regions. I think Notre Dame holds out for that. It's likely inevitable. It could be 5 years. It could be 10 years. But Notre Dame, I think, is still a viable independent. There are no independents to play. The only other independents are, who are they? Army's not anymore. Army's one of the last remaining, but they've joined the AAC this year. I got the wrong mouse. Hold on. I would say there's Notre Dame and 2 other teams, if I'm not mistaken. UConn is one of them. Maybe it's UConn and UMass. I'm trying to get to the independents here. Hold on. Bear with me a second. I'll get you more comments. Yeah, there we go. Notre Dame, UConn, and UMass. That's it. That's all there is. You're not scheduling those guys. Go Tigers. Big LSU fan. James, everything New Orleans and LSU, Louisiana seems to be. I would listen, and again, it's got some college spin to it, so we'll talk about this for a second. Spencer Rattler, I told James, was a steal for the Saints in the 6th round out of South Carolina. The team didn't play well this year, but by all accounts, he has matured a lot, which was his big problem. Maturity was his big problem, and I think he'll be a steal potentially for the Saints. Maybe not this year. You may not even notice it for 3 years. Penn State, West Virginia playing now while we're also watching New York Yankees and Houston. PSU and West Virginia, are they playing? Hello, Paul Spada, our Boston fan out there in Wisconsin. Good to have you with us. What's Wisconsin? What's the mood in Wisconsin with Luke Fickell coming into his 2nd season? What's the mood in Wisconsin? I think Luke Fickell's a great, great coach. He cut his teeth in a great program at Ohio State. He did a tremendous job at Cincinnati with recruiting and sending kids to the NFL and winning games, right? First non-power conference team in the playoff, 14 playoff. You'll see it every year now. So I'd love to. What's the mood up there in Wisconsin? Chris F. Grave, good to have you with us, Chris. In college baseball, are we still using the old Todd Van Poppel syndrome? Or are we still seeing, the old Todd Van Poppel syndrome? Guys getting rushed out to the bigs out of desperation. Pros see the future before it's here. Probably. It's funny when I talk to some of the and do the interviews on 101 with Keith Engle. I've always noticed it used to take guys quite a while, most guys, quite a while to get to the major leagues. Some guys never played in the minors. Del Kaline never played in the minors. Catfish never played. But a lot of guys would take, 4 or 5 years, 6 years to get to the majors. It's not the same anymore. So now I have it in my head. It took you a long time to get to the majors, so-and-so, Roy White. But in the context of today, with the hitters, I mean, you saw that Jackson Holliday is going to be a great, great player. Great, great player with the Orioles. And again, I don't want to talk a lot of Major League Baseball, but he's 20 years old. He come up, he failed, got a taste of the big league, send him back, and bring him back. He'll be better for it. Now, we don't want to get into the David Clyde syndrome. It's probably more as applicable or as appropriate, I guess, for this conversation as Todd Van Poppel. Rush to the major leagues. Seen a lot of it. Part of it, I think, Chris, is out of necessity. Again, you can't go with 10-man pitching staffs anymore because guys aren't ready to. And I'm going to go into a whole Major League Baseball thing here. I don't want to do that. But we can pick up this conversation on the Major League Baseball update this week for sure. You need 12, 13, 14-man staffs today, right? Because you're not letting guys pitch more than an inning. They go all out. So you got to you have to rush guys, and they're not ready. So, yes, a lot of guys, and you'll see it. I mean, to tie it back to college, you see a lot of guys come out of college, get drafted, go to a half a season in AA, or a half a season in AA, a half a season in AAA, and then right to the major leagues. Year 2, sometimes late in year 1. Go Oregon. Paul is an Oregon fan in Wisconsin who also has Boston roots. I can't figure this guy out. Kidding. Love Paul. Also, Rans to the Dogs. Who are we talking about? Who? Oh, gosh. Interesting, too. One thing I didn't bring up, and I do have a note here that I couldn't read. Kirby Smart, in the last week since we talked, has become the highest paid coach in college football at $13 million. The only coach at $13 million. Probably the only coach worth $13 million. There's zero chance, I think, of Kirby Smart ever needing to buy himself out of his contract to go somewhere else. Kirby Smart's probably, maybe you're talking about the top 25 coaches. Kirby's definitely ranked number 1. I can tell you if we get to it. Rattler can make all the throws. He's always had the talent. We talked a little bit about this on the National Sport. I can't say it because I'm so used to Northeast Streaming Sports. The National Streaming Sports show tonight that Spencer Rattler dropped because a lot of the scouts were paying attention to QB1. I've talked to about QB1 a lot on this show. It was a show that ran for 3 or 4 seasons on Netflix. It's gone now. But they would spotlight 3 high school quarterbacks that were getting ready to choose their college and move on to the next step in their career. Spencer Rattler was featured, I think, in season 3. And had some issues. He had some attitude issues. He had some maturity issues. He never finished the season. He got kicked off the team. I believe it was like the day after the high school prom. We still don't know to this day. This is 5 or 6 years ago now. We still don't know to this day why he got kicked off the team. And he had an attitude problem, and there were issues at Oklahoma. He got to South Carolina and he started to mature. And from what I understand from some South Carolina fans that I'm close to and some conversations I've heard around the program, that he has definitely matured and his attitude has gotten better through a tough season this year. There was never any question, James, that he could make the throws. The talent was always there. He's not that big a kid, as I remember. But he can make all the throws, yes, and he can do more. I think this kid could be an NFL quarterback. There was some talk if the Patriots had gone wide receiver or made a trade in the first round and didn't go the quarterback route, that he might have been a guy they targeted later in the draft. Paul, I think to my question about Luke Fickell's year 2 and what the mood is like in Wisconsin, listen, it's not going to be. They play in. Do we have conferences this year in the Big Ten? I think Let me look back. Not sure if this is going to help me because this is, it looks like they would have eliminated it. Big Ten. I can't tell yet. I don't remember whether they eliminated conferences or not in the Big Ten. If they did, and Wisconsin stays in the West, things get a little bit tougher with Oregon, with Washington. Well, Washington's going to be have a tough season this year. But with Oregon coming in there, USC is going to be better. UCLA, we don't know. Deshaun Foster, we'll find out what they've got. But I think that West is going to be different. It's not going to be, you're not going to be able to win it with 3 losses anymore. Wisconsin was in it with 4 losses in the conference. They were in it until near the end of the season. There's JB at the Back It Up Binge Bought podcast. I don't remember who JB's football team is. College football team, that is. You can catch JB's stuff on YouTube. Make sure you do that, guys, please. CA, what do you got? Yeah, White's been enjoying again this year. She was very impressed with that sophomore gal's complete 14 innings for LSU. I saw a bit while working. Oh, so the game you were referring to is the college. Again, and I should say this, right? We talked about the college baseball World Series. But in fairness, as we've talked about on a lot of my shows, the women's games are gaining ground, depending on which sport we're talking about. But the softball World Series is, and I say they still call it, I believe, the softball World Series, college softball World Series, is a very exciting event. It's a lot of fun. The games are well played, well pitched, well managed. A lot of fun to watch. Paul does love his Boston sports. And again, I'm not kissing up to Paul by using this background. I use this, and I think most of you can attest. I've used this background, I believe, all of last year. I had one of some coaches, kind of a coach montage behind me, and I thought it was more appropriate to have the backdrop of a stadium behind me, and one of my favorites because of a bit of a personal connection, in a way, to Boston College. I like the stadium. I love the atmosphere at Orchard Park. Not Orchard Park. Cherry Hill is amazing. James says Kirby deserves the money. Listen, when it comes to money, I've always of the opinion, if somebody's willing to pay you, then, more power to you. I don't have a problem with anybody making as much as they can. If somebody's willing to pay you, then good for you. Now, if you're worth the money, that's a different question, but Kirby probably is, especially with the money getting paid to guys who aren't even coaching. They have one good year and they go up to, 10-year contracts for $100 million. I'm looking at you, Mel Tucker. Look at you, Jimbo Fisher. Kirby's very smart. Nice play on words there, Paul. Impressed. Yeah, I think I figured that out. I think. I was able. Are you talking into your microphone? You were able, I'm going to say you were able to get your power nap in time before the show. That's good. I think I figured out everything you're saying there, CA. Great job. Happy birthdays today. Dennis Leonard, former teammate. We brought up Dennis Leonard in our interview with Buddy Biancalana last week. And by the way, we'll have Brian Holloway, who has a connection. I hope Brian's coming. Brian's gone a little dark on me here the last couple of days. Brian, if you're listening, Brian, you got the link? Please, I'll reach out to you again tomorrow. But it always makes me feel a little more comfortable when I've got a week of confirmation. Brian's a good guy. I find it very hard to believe he won't be there. But Brian was a great player at Stanford before a stellar career in the NFL with the Patriots and the Raiders. Anyway, Dennis Leonard's birthday today. Happy birthday, Dennis. Graduate of Iona College. I did not know that. Dennis Leonard is he an East Coast guy? I'd love to get Dennis on the show, but he gave me a couple of getting off the college football topic again. He gave me a connection for Brett Saberhagen. I've got one for Jim Sundberg. He gave him as well, but I've already had some talk with Jim Sundberg about coming on the show. You know, tying this back to the college football huddle, we had some good college guests on as well. We had Larry Farmer, former coach at UCLA. Danny, you probably remember Larry Farmer, played at UCLA, later coached as they continued to try to fill the void left by John Wooden. Coached at Weber State, I think, besides there, and Loyola Chicago. And I believe he's got a new book out. Maybe we'll get Larry on again. We've had the great Dick Hoop Weiss on the interview show, and I'm trying to think some other college guys we've had on. No, they'll come to me. What do you got here, JB? USC. Back to the tailback U. Ricky Bell started for me. Charles White. Before that, it was the infamous, I guess, O.J. Simpson, Marcus Allen, Ricky Bell, Charles White, Davis. What was Davis's first name? That's escaping me now. Somebody will have it for me. Danny Fuller, that USC hater, should know. They were tailback U for a lot of years under John McKay, and then later John Robinson. Great tailbacks coming. See, this is the stuff I like to do. I like to talk about today's game, but especially when there's nothing going on and game-wise, I like to go back in time and talk about the great players of the past. USC is one of the best programs in the country in football. People forget about it. Historically, I believe, I haven't done this in a while, I want to say they're second still in college football national championships. What do we got? Yeah, here we go. Come on. I want to know. Yeah, I want to know most. Sugar. I don't want about a year. I want a number. I need a number. We'll find it. I want to say USC is still second. Who has the most? Here we go. Who has the most? I should do it. Most college football championships. Here we go. Who's won the most? This is, you know what? I fall for this one every time. Who has the most college football championships in history, guys? It's not who you think it is. If you look it up, you'll find out. Alabama's second. USC is sixth with 9. Alabama's second with 16. Notre Dame is fourth with 13. Michigan is fifth with 10. Then you get to USC with 9. See if anybody gets this without looking it up. I think I know we've had this question before because now that I see the answer, I remember that I got caught on this one myself during the very same type of conversation. I believe Wisconsin is in the Big Ten. They're in the West right now. I don't know if they're playing 2 divisions or 1 is all. Definitely is. You say believe it. Wisconsin is in the. They're definitely in the Big Ten. We know that, Paul. I'm not sure if I'm reading that right or not. Rick Hardick, good afternoon, Rick. Good to have you with us. Rick, I just got to tell you, I hope you're still here. Those guys who get offended with anything you put up, that's their problem. Don't make their problems your problems, buddy. I'm only offended by one thing. People that are offended by everything. That's it. So anyway, good to have you. What do you got here? BC's a great, isn't BC, I'm sorry, Cherry Hill. Paul Spada can certainly back me up on this. Great place to watch a football game. Went to a lot of games there. to see Josh Beekman, who I know Rick is familiar with from Amsterdam. Rick's another Amsterdamite. And Josh played 3 seasons with Matt Ryan, new commentator with CBS, chasing out Phil Simms and Boomer Esiason. And I'm sorry, Matt, he doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame. Probably not a popular opinion among some people, but I don't think he belongs in the Hall of Fame. Now, Wisconsin is in the Big Ten for sure, Paul. I'm just curious. I don't know whether they have an East and a West. They were in the West previously of the Big Ten. CA showing off his emoji collection again. JB, I'm guessing you were a USC fan. Marcus Allen was a full. Well, yeah, but Marcus Allen, don't forget, Marcus Allen won a Heisman Trophy. He was a fullback when Charles White won his Heisman Trophy, so he became the tailback after Charles White left. Ricky Bell was fullback size, by the way. I can't remember Davis's first name. Again, small player, didn't make it in the NFL. I believe he got drafted by the Jets. But I remember a game where USC was trailing Notre Dame like 24-0 at halftime and won the game like Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis runs a second half kickoff back for a touchdown, and USC goes on to score 55 or something in the second half. Reggie Bush, Lendell White were a great tandem out of USC for sure. Reggie just got his Heisman back, and I have mixed feelings about that, but that's another story. Lendell White, if I'm not mistaken, Lendell White was the guy who got the ball on the fourth down play for USC when they lost to Texas in that great national championship game. And I believe he was playing sick that day. Lendell White was a great player. Didn't have much of an NFL career. I think he had one decent year. I believe he was in Tennessee. Lendell White was a really good player. And Reggie Bush was just a force of nature in college. One of the great college backs. CA almost forgot. Watched a wee bit from the Saudi smash. A Germany giant was something to watch against those top Chinese boys. What are they sponsoring now, the Saudis? Nyler Morgan was an absolute disgrace to Major League Baseball. California kid who got drafted out of Nelson, British Columbia. He could play hockey. He would have fared better as a pest in the NHL. Chris, what's the college? I don't know if I know the answer to this. What's the college situation north of the border? College sports situation. I know you have universities, right? I mean, is college sports big in Canada? And when I talk, I know, again, I don't even know that hockey's that big on the university level because, they go from juniors to the NHL. But we know there's Canadian football. So there's a lot of Canadian football players. We know there's Canadian baseball, basketball. They have a Canadian Olympic team. So are these sports, high profile the way they are here in the States? There's a question for you. Thank you, JB. I did get the Anthony Davis, but I appreciate the help there. Sometimes the mind just... Anthony Davis was a great college player. He's the epitome. Similar to Tim Tebow and Steve Spurrier, guys who were great college quarterbacks, but just didn't have what it took to be on the next level. Anthony Davis was that in amongst running backs. And there were a lot of guys who never made it on the next level. And it doesn't diminish their abilities. There's a difference to me between great college players and great pro players. I've said this for a long time. I think players like Archie Griffin, their legacies have been diminished. Their legacies on the college level have been diminished because they didn't turn into superstars on the pro level. I think Archie Griffin and Tim Tebow are the top 2 college football players of all time. Archie won back-to-back Heismans, playing for great Ohio State teams. I understand the game was different, so what? And Tim Tebow was, the Archie Griffin of quarterbacks. Could have won back-to-back almost won back-to-back Heismans. I think he won as a sophomore, right? Maybe the only, I think Herschel won as a sophomore as well. Now, maybe Herschel only won as a junior. And guys will say Herschel Walker. I will always stick with it's a subjective argument, but I always stick with Archie Griffin. I'm a big Archie Griffin fan. Ricky Williams was a great college player. See, yes, I think Ricky's Hall of Fame worthy, yes. But again, to me, those are two different things, right? Is he college football Hall of Fame worthy? Absolutely. Is he NFL Hall of Fame worthy? I think so. Archie Griffin, though, was all the player that Ricky Williams was on the college level. Back-to-back Heismans. Nobody's ever done that. But I really believe his legacy has been diminished because he didn't become a star. He rushed for 1,000 yards, I think, 1 year with the Bengals. Had some injury issues. Wasn't very big. He wasn't big enough for the NFL or fast enough. But that shouldn't diminish, again, his legacy on a college level. And I think he's one of the best of all time. Let's get into this. I'm going to get into this college coaching. Ranking the college coaches. Let's see how you guys agree or disagree with this. And I'll give you the ranking from the year before as well. Kirby Smart moves up to number 1, Rick. He was number 2 last year, and I know you know who was number 1. Nick Saban, who is the greatest college football coach of all time. Indisputable in my mind. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. 24-0 the last 3 years in the regular season in the SEC. The gap between him and Rick kind of said it. There's him and everybody else. Number 2, the Athletic has Dabo Swinney. He was number 3. He's moved up to number 2. I think Dabo takes a little step back here. I'm going to put Kalen DeBoer at number 2. Big shoes to fill at Alabama, but I'm going to put him at number 2 amongst today's coaches. I'm going to move Lance Leopold, who they have 3. He was 10 last year. I'm going to leave him at 3. I'm moving Kellen DeBoer from their 4th spot to the 2nd spot. He was 16 last year. And I'm going to slot Dabo into that 4th spot, or actually 5th spot. No, that would be 4th spot behind Leopold and DeBoer. Ryan Day comes in 5th. I'm okay with that. Brian Kelly, I'm moving down the list. I'm sorry. I know that John DeLon would not like this. Maybe James Martin won't like this. Brian Kelly's moving down. He's not in the top 10. James Franklin, 6 and 7, don't belong in the top 10. They don't win big games. They just don't. Kelly's 5 and 13. Well, I guess this is what while he was at Notre Dame, I think. 5 and 13 against AP top 10 opponents. Blown out of national championship games. Blown out in the playoffs. James Franklin can't beat Ohio State or Penn State. We've talked about that a lot. 1 and 4 against top 10 teams the last 2 years. And again, his struggles against Ohio State are legendary. I'm putting Kyle Whittingham at Utah above both those guys. Move him up to 6. I'm going to move Lincoln Riley into the above Chip Kelly and James Franklin. I'm putting Mike Norvell above both of them. And I'm going to put Scorsese above both of them right now, too. So you can move Kelly and Franklin down to 10 and 11, maybe 12, because I love Chris Kleiman at Kansas State as well. So I'm moving them up. I'm moving him up. So slot in Franklin in whatever order you want with Kelly at 11 and 12. And to me, that's a gift for you two guys. 13 here is Jeff Brom at Louisville. No argument there. Not rated a year before. Mark Stoops was 18 a year before. 14 at Kentucky. Underrated coach. Does more with less than anybody here. Kurt Ferentz, who gets a lot of grief for the offense. His son, by the way, has been hired at Maryland as a analyst. Kirk Ferentz comes in at 15. He was 23 the year before. Listen, Iowa's always got a competitive team. They just can't score points. Dave Clawson at Wake Forest at 16. He was 12 the year before. I'm okay with that. Josh Heupel at 17, 22 last year. I might move him up. Matt Rule's at 18. He was 15 the year before. I think 18 is a good spot for him right now. Luke Fickell is at 19. He was 11 last year. I think you're going to see Luke Fickell make a move up this year, as we were talking about with Paul Spot. And I'll get to your guys' comments here in just a second, I promise you. Mike Gundy, you know I love Mike Gundy. Mike Gundy will leave at 20. Lane Kiffin at 21. Watch him come up. Not ranked last year. Lane Kiffin might be a top 10 coach, guys. He's better than Chip Kelly. Sorry, I keep saying Chip Kelly. He's better than he's better than Coach Kelly. James Franklin. Jonathan Smith at Michigan State. Tough job this year, but yes, 22 I can see. Hugh Freeze at Auburn, I like a lot, 23. Jed Fish at Washington, number 24, did a great job at Arizona last year. And a surprise here for this, Rich Rodriguez from Jacksonville State at 25, flamed out badly at Michigan. Great coach at West Virginia, flamed out badly at Michigan, badly at Arizona, making a comeback here at Jacksonville State. Just missed a cut. I got to drop somebody and put Troy Calhoun in the top 25. Sorry, he's done a great job for a long time at Air Force. Jamie Chadwell, yes, he's done a great job at Liberty, or a great job at Liberty. Before that, he's done a great job at Charleston. Matt Campbell, a bit overrated. Jeff Traylor, a guy I love. I got to find a way to get him into the top 25. Mario Cristobal from the team I root for more often than not, Miami. You got to earn your way back in that top 25, Mario, and it's about time to get it done this year. Eli Drinkwitz I should say, at Missouri. Great coach. Did a great job this year. Again, you can make an argument. You got to drop one of these guys out for him. JP Fleck, Minnesota, up and down a bit, so probably just missing the cuts okay. Dave Dorian at North Carolina State, I would say the same thing. Willie Fritz at Houston. I might have to drop one of these guys for him. Great job at Tulane previously. Mac Brown, I'm okay missing a cut. And Jason Candle from Toledo. Got to earn his way in. Jeff Monken, who I love, he just missed a cut here. It's hard to put him in this top 25 and drop enough guys out. But Army's a great coach. He's a great coach for Army, I should say. Let me get back to did this. Here we are. Troy Davis, 5'8", running back out of Iowa State, was a great college running back. I remember Troy Davis. He still holds a record with over 4,000 yards there. Two-time All-American, never panned out in the NFL. Again, does not diminish his feats as a college back. Great college back. I mean, Barry Sanders is going to get ranked higher in college. Not that Barry Sanders wasn't tremendous in college. And James, you and I have had this conversation about me ranking Archie above Barry Sanders. But again, I think Barry, not that his numbers weren't tremendous, but he gets elevated as well because of his success on the next level, which I don't think is necessarily relevant. Chris, it's a tight funnel direct from the university to the NFL. But when some of the guys squeak through big. Mark Ripien, Ruben Mays. These were Canadian guys. I did not know. I think I knew Mark Ripien. I didn't know Ruben Mays was Canadian. The scene is drenched in history, but it's a new world now with the CFL and the XFL. More to come for sure now with more opportunity. There's about 4 professional football leagues outside of this in the States now. You got the USFL, you got the XFL, you got this United Football League or whatever the hell we call it. So that's a great list. Now they played college though. Ruben Mays played college here in the States, right, Chris? Mark Rippon, I do not remember where he might have played in college. Ruben Mays did play for the Saints. He'd had a couple of good seasons. I think he got injured. Good, great name to bring up, Chris. I agree with Kiffin being a top 10 coach, but so is no, he's not. No, I understand. You want to root for your guy. And to be honest, James, take him out of LSU. Say it never happened. He never moved, right? Put your blinders on and look at his body of work at Notre Dame. 5-13 against top 10 teams. Flamed out in the playoffs. Flamed out in a national championship game. Flamed out in a lot of other big games. Not a top 10 coach. Now, he brings LSU back to prominence and wins a national championship. I'll change my tune. But until that happens, him and James Franklin are the most overrated coaches in college today. Brian Kelly, I keep saying Chip Kelly, so apologize. I apologize to either Chip or Brian, whichever is offended by that mix-up. Barry had Thurman Thomas. That was who was coaching there then? Was it Jimmy Johnson was gone? Was it Les Miles? Mike Gundy wasn't there yet. Who coached these two guys? Rusty Hilger coached there for a bit. Good question. Bring it. I'm not going to look it up. You let me know, James. Got a cat heading towards me here. JB's all-time favorite back, college and pro, Earl Campbell. Forget about pro. I really don't care. For the sake of this conversation, I don't care about pro. But again, Earl rates on both, just like, very similar to Ricky Williams in college, I think. Earl was a great player, definitely in college. Again, I give my edge to Archie only because of the 3 years that he had were, at the time, were just historic. Now, again, the game changes. You're not going to have guys rush for out these huge rushing totals that Barry Sanders and Thurman Thomas and others ran for at Oklahoma State. Troy Davis, we talked about. You're not going to see 2,000-yard rushers anymore. Well, at least for the time being, until things cycle back. I'm not sure the game will ever change back to what it was. And it's okay. We don't have to see 3 yards in a cloud of dust either. And all these names, listen, they're all worthy. Everybody we talk about, anytime we've talked about Barry Sanders, we've talked about Earl Campbell, we've talked about Archie Griffin, we've talked about a lot of others. A lot of guys will say it was OJ. 2 great years at USC. Both Heisman Trophy worthy. How many coaches flamed out against Nick Saban? More than didn't. Think about Georgia. Before they struck gold with Kirby Smart, they had to go to Nick Saban's staff. Right. And I don't mean that in any disrespect, Rick, I promise. They had to go to Saban's staff to get Kirby Smart after Mark Rich just could not get over the hump at Georgia. He was a really good football coach, Mark Rich. Could not get over the hump. And they had some other good coaches between Vince Dooley and Mark Rich who would have some decent seasons here and there. But all in all, they just couldn't. Even Vince Dooley could not get past Alabama when Bear was there. Nick Saban is the GOAT. There's no doubt about it. People like to say, and I don't want to hate to sound like a broken record, but I've had a lot of the arguments that I'll get about Nick Saban and go, well, he coached at Alabama. Anybody could win those national championships. How many national championships do you think they won between Bear Bryant in 1978 or 9? No, I'm sorry. Well, when he left, he didn't win any national championships his last few years. So he left, I think, in 82. Between that and Nick Saban, there was one season, and a lot of those other seasons, they were terrible. They won one under Gene Stallings in the time, 30 years between Bear Bryant and Nick Saban. One. And many of those years, they were barely in the conversation in great college football programs. Historically, yes, but in that time period, no. Ray Perkins flamed out. Again, I'm not going to go through Shula, one of the Shulas, Du Bois, Mike Francione. If it was Mike or not. Dennis Francione, sorry. Mike Price, who never even got the job because he went to a strip club. Pat Jones, that's it. Thank you. Thank you, James. You know, Oklahoma State's another team. And with Oklahoma and Texas leaving, Oklahoma State, Mike Gundy's got a great chance to really, really make a stamp here. Oklahoma State's had good football teams through the years. But again, they were never quite good enough to overtake the blinding light of Oklahoma and Nebraska mostly, right? They had some good teams back in the day under Pat Jones. They had some good teams under Jimmy Johnson. He didn't get the Miami Hurricane job just because he stunk at Oklahoma State. Les Miles. You can say what you want. James might have nothing good to say about Les Miles, ex-LSU coach. Les Miles was a really good coach at Oklahoma State that got the job at LSU, and he won a national championship at LSU. So I know a lot of people there's a lot of vitriol out there about Les Miles. I think Les Miles, for some reason, they didn't play an exciting brand of football a lot of times. Les Miles was there. A Mad Hatter. But they were a good football team, and he had them in national championship games and won a national championship. So Oklahoma State, by the way, has had some really good teams through the years, just never – they had their chance to really shine. Time flies on me. 3 years ago, maybe it was 4 years ago, when Cincinnati got in Oklahoma State, if they win the Big 12 championship against Baylor that night, that year, they would have been in the playoff and maybe had their chance. I mean, I doubt it because, Georgia was great. But they might have had a chance. They could have shocked the world. See, he's got his hockey sticks out. We're looking at a Boston Rangers original 6 Eastern Conference final, by the way. CA, Barry's the greatest running back never to get a ring. Ricky Williams shouldn't even sniff the Hall of Fame. Sniffing wasn't his thing. Smoking was, by the way, just if we're looking for humor there. CA. I'd probably agree with that. As I think back on the college level, again, Archie Griffin won national championship when he won the Heisman, so he's not going to be in that conversation. Barry was a great college player. I'm trying to stick to college now. Ricky Williams would sniff the College Hall of Fame. Ricky Williams was Earl Campbell almost at Texas. I mean, there's no getting past that. And again, I think, CA, what's happening is we tend to, again, blur the lines of who was great in college because they either did well or didn't do as well as expected in the NFL. James, oh boy. Oh, my God. My guest Friday is Brian Holloway. He grew up in Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska, and ended up. I don't know what the family history was. He ended up in Maryland, so playing high school football. So one of the questions before I realized that he had moved. I was going to ask him why, how you grow up in Omaha and you don't end up at Nebraska, you end up at Stanford. But that's not relevant. I mean, Nebraska has been in trouble since they moved out of the Big 8, Big 12. They were able to dominate and get all those big local guys. They played a brand of football. Tom Osborne was a great coach. Great coach. And it took him a while to get over the hump, too. But those days are gone, man. When they moved out to the Big Ten, they became basically irrelevant. I do think Matt Rule's on the right track bringing them back, though. They've gone through a ton of coaches. I mean, the guy who did the best there was his longtime assistant who took over, whose name is now Frank Zolik, who replaced him and did very well, got to a Big 12 championship game, and his record was pretty good until they chased him off because, they weren't winning national championships. Then they went through a bunch of coaches, and Callahan, Riley, Bo Pelini, what's his name? Panini, whatever his name is. He had LSU roots too, didn't he, James? And of course, Scott Frost never worked out. So I think Matt Rule might be on a way to getting the ship righted here. We'll see. Plus, playing in the West, if there's two divisions in the Big Ten yet, which I still don't know, we'll see. James's remarks here about Les Miles was a really great recruiter and a really good head coach. I won't disagree with that. They had talented teams during his regime. He seems reviled, though. And I think part of that is because after they chased him out of town, the anti-Les Miles in Ed Orgeron comes in and wins the national championship. Probably one of the biggest fluke national championships ever in the history of sports was that LSU team. Great players. Burrow, Chase. Who else was on that team? There was another great wide receiver on a team that's escaping my memory right now, right? But Joe Brady's probably the guy more responsible for that than Ed Orgeron, man. Bo Pelini does have LSU roots. Look at me. I got a mind like a steel trap. It's just can't get anything out of it. Where's Ed from Columbus? I want to know what he had in the Powerade pool tonight. He picks a color. Apparently, it's a thing. What do we got here? Everything came together in 2000. Justin Jefferson, thank you. It did all come together. And Ed Orgeron, and I shouldn't say this. I mean, I guess my first comment that LSU winning was the biggest, fluke of a championship. That's unfair to LSU. Ed Orgeron being the coach of a national championship is like the biggest fluke in the history of college championship sports, I think. I mean, maybe you can come up with somebody else for me, but he fits the bill. Sorry, I got a little runny nose myself here tonight, James. Just started the last couple hours. Maybe the studio was infected when I went in earlier. What else we got going on here in the world of college football? We can switch gears. I do want to talk a little. I want to talk about this. Oh, wrong thing. I want to talk about. We got this great story, and now I lost him. Oh boy! Now I lost the story about the kid who. Maybe I can find it if I scroll down here. There's a former Major League Baseball player who's 28 years old, who's going to walk on at Arkansas this year and try and make the team. I'll find that story in a second. See what else is going on here. News. Sam Heward, former 5-star quarterback, is moving from to Utah from Sal Poly San Luis Obispo. So he's been playing at the FCS level. He was actually a 5-star recruit at Washington before that. It's the same school his father and uncle played quarterback for. And Damon Heward, I believe, played for the Patriots for a little while. I believe he was a backup quarterback to Tom Brady when Tom Brady took over for Drew Bledsoe when Mo Lewis was the MVP of the first Super Bowl champion Patriot team. 2 Republican congressmen have introduced a bill Wednesday that will provide the NCAA, college conferences, and member schools federal protection from legal challenges that stand in the way of their ability to govern college sports. What does all that mean? Beats the hell out of me. They've been asking Congress for help regulating how student athletes can be paid for NIL for several years. How about we don't pay them at all? How about that? How about we have some kind of semblance of amateurism and say, we thought about it and we decided it's not a good idea. We already have a professional league. Jeepers creepers. This is at a time when the portal worked for the teams with Joe Burrow. He did not get the starting job at OSU. And by the way, the portal was pretty new at the time, at least. And I don't know, did Burrow have to go and sit out a year or not? Because, again, we used to have some rules, and maybe you got this here. I don't know. Oh, are there rules? Hold on one second. Let me go back to this for a second. So Joe Burrow transfers from Ohio State, as we know. It was the very beginning of when the transfer portal really started to explode. When the rules changed and you didn't have to sit out a year. And I don't think I think Joe Burrow was one of the first guys who did not have to do that. James wants to know, are there rules against going pro from pro baseball down to college? You could, if you weren't, as long as you weren't a professional in that sport. Other guys have done it. John Elway played some minor league baseball when he was still playing at Stanford. There's a quarterback. God, he might have won the Heisman for Florida State. Wenke. I think he played professional baseball and went back to college to play football. So you can play a different sport and go back to college and play in a sport you did not play professionally. So. And as far as I know, you would have 4 years of eligibility. Chris Wenke was like 28 years old when he graduated from Florida State. I think he got drafted by Sonia's Carolina Panthers, by the way. If I'm not mistaken, Chris Wenke, I don't know if he won a Heisman. He might have. But I'm pretty sure he was drafted by the Carolina Panthers and never really made out much. Cedric Benson. Cedric Benson, I believe, was right behind Ricky. If not that year, then maybe a year later. Came right behind Ricky and break the boys' records. I'm not sure if he broke the records or not. The next generation to the last kid, they can break Earl's records after Gen X. Let me see. What are Texas? Let's look up Texas Longhorn rushing leaders. Let's see what we got. Ricky Williams is number 1 at 62.79. Cedric Benson was number 2 at 55.40, and Earl comes in at 44.43. Earl's the best of those three by far, though. By far. Understand, but the game was better. None as far as running back will never be better than Earl Campbell. Today, never. I will argue Archie Griffin, but again, I can't. That's my argument, right? And it's more like a preferred taste kind of thing. Nobody's going to argue that Earl Campbell. I'm not going to argue that there isn't an argument to be had between Archie Griffin and Earl Campbell. I just prefer Archie Griffin. And there's other guys who can get thrown in here too. There's guys going back in history that we're not even thinking of. Yes, out of Texas. We just gave you the numbers there, CA. Oh, you're saying the best running back out of Texas. I got you. I mean, you can make an argument that Earl was the best running back in college football history. I wouldn't say you can't make the argument, right? Russell Wilson, another one. Excellent catch, James. Another guy who played baseball professionally and went back to college to play football and play it pretty well. Up until now, he's all done. Lanky did win the Heisman. Check me out. Drafted by the Panthers at 26. I was a little. I'd aged him to 28. I'm a soon-to-be 64-year-old man. How do I remember all this stuff from? Well, that was probably 25 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. I remember all this stuff. But ask me what my wife told me to do while I was down here in my office. I don't have a clue. Oh, God. Thank you, CA. Oh, my gosh. What else is going on? Oh, here's a guy I want to talk about. Monte Harrison. Staring me right in the face. Former professional baseball player. He's headed back to school. He's 2 years removed, less than 2 years removed from his last Major League Baseball appearance with the Angels. So he did play in the majors. He plans to walk on with the Razorbacks. He's 28. He was a 4-star recruit who committed to Nebraska as part of the class of 2014. But after the Brewers drafted him in the second round of the MLB draft, he embarked upon a career in professional baseball. He reached the majors in 2020. And as a senior at Lee Summit, Missouri West High in 2013, Harrison caught 60 passes for 1,007 yards and 13 touchdowns. He signed a letter of intent with Nebraska, then coached by Bo Pelini, James Martin. And he had offers from Arkansas, where he's going to try to walk on, Iowa, Kansas State, Michigan State, and Missouri, among others. That's an interesting story, huh? I love stories like that. Let's not forget we played a lot of games on AstroTurf. Yeah, I don't know. See, I'm not sure if you're talking about that was an advantage or a disadvantage for them. I would think it was a disadvantage. The game was faster on AstroTurf, but more injuries, right? So, and I believe the guys we've talked about, all the guys we've talked about played on AstroTurf. Barry Sanders in college now. Barry Sanders at Oklahoma State. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. Campbell, Williams, Benson, Archie, Griffin, all played on artificial turf at the time. It's funny, the arguments about the turf they play on, the artificial turf they play on today, it's not anything close. It's field turf, right? And they blamed a lot of injuries, leg injuries, at least the NFL has, on field turf. But the stuff can't be anywhere near as dangerous as the damn AstroTurf was. Worst thing ever invented for sports was AstroTurf. Basically, laying, indoor-outdoor carpeting over concrete. Very little padding, you put a little... I don't even think there is AstroTurf anymore, though, right? The AstroTurf that, we talk about now, I don't think any schools are using. If they use artificial surfaces, which there's a lot of, it's field turf, which is a different animal from the AstroTurf. But again, a lot of leg injuries are being blamed on the field turf now, too. So go back to the grass. These teams can't, this is a $10 billion a year industry, football, let's talk about, right? Where the injuries are coming from. we can't we can't afford to keep up a regular grass field. I know they get beat up in rainstorms and whatnot, but you play inside. You got retractable domes on most of the dome stadiums. Obviously, it's hard to grow grass inside, but you can do almost anything today. And I would bet you anything that there's somebody out there, landscaping expert, who can get real grass to grow inside. And we can afford to take care of those fields, in a $10 billion industry. Penn State finally scored 1-12. Is this the women or is this? I'm confused, CA, because we were talking about men and women earlier. So is this this can't be the Big 12 tournament. Penn State doesn't play in the Big 12. West Virginia does. So I'm a little confused. Let's see if I can find out what's going on here. Division I baseball. I'll look at the real quick. Let me see. Do I have scores on this? Yeah. Hold on, CA. I'll find if you're talking about men or women here real quick at least. Top 25 scores, Virginia over George Washington, 18-5. 24. Wake Forest, one of last year's great stories. And these aren't conference tournament games, I don't believe. So maybe it's the women. If you're talking about the women, it's entirely possible that they've started playing already. I want to look at the top 25 in baseball. We'll be getting in. We'll cover more baseball, as I said, once we get to into tournament play and the World Series, College Baseball World Series tournament. Tennessee has moved into the number one spot at 39-9. They're up from 3. Clemson has moved up 2 spots to the number 2 spot. A&M drops a couple spots from number 1 to number 3, still 40-8. Kentucky, Arkansas round out the top 5. East Carolina, Oregon State, Florida State, Duke, and Virginia are the next 5 and round out the top 10. No huge surprises there. Oregon State maybe a little bit at 35-12. Not one of your normal participants that you see ranked high in NCAA baseball. North Carolina, Wake Forest is moving up a bit. They're now 32-16 as they get primed for a run at Oklahoma City. South Carolina, Mississippi State, and Georgia round out the top 15. Good story in good story in Cal Irvine at 16. They fell from 9 this week, though. They had a couple losses this last week. Arizona, Oklahoma State, Indiana State. Big story in basketball, big story in baseball. They move up from 24-20. They're now 34-10. Troy, not somebody you see there all the time, 34-15. They were not ranked. They move up to 21. Louisiana, North Carolina State, Oregon, and UC Santa Barbara round out the top 25. And we will be running towards, I'm not going to be able to tell from here. We will be running into conference tournaments here in the next week or 2. AstroTurf was thin carpet over concrete. Some were worse than others. Remember the vet? I mean, you could see the seams between where the things were. They're playing Big 10 versus Big 12. That's more like it. What else we got, guys? We talked some football. We talked some basketball. Any news in basketball we need to talk about? Seton Hall, Kaderi Richmond transfers from Seton Hall to St. John's. Rick Pitino's had a great offseason. Hit the transfer portal pretty hard. St. John's will be in a tournament next year. I will bet my life they will be in this tournament next year. Colorado adds Danny Manning to their coaching staff. Danny Manning did coach great star, big Final Four star when Kansas won the championship with Larry Brown as their coach. Then he had a decent NBA career before injuries hurt him. He did coach. He spent the last 2 years as a coach, assistant coach for Louisville. But he did serve as head coach at Tulsa and Wake Forest. in addition to being an interim coach at Maryland in 21-22. Not great success for Danny Manning, unfortunately, on the coaching front. But tell you, a great college basketball player. One of the great tournaments wins I can ever remember, Kansas. We think about Villanova or Georgetown. I think about Kansas winning that national championship over Oklahoma, if I'm not mistaken. It was a Danny Manning show, and they had no business being in that championship game. And a great coaching job by Larry Brown. Danny Manning put that team on his back, and they won a national championship. Great job. Let's see what else. Point guard, Utah point guard Devian Smith is joining Rick Pitino, also at St. John's. So again, Rick Pitino is loading up and getting ready to go. We talked about this bill from the Congress. Nobody knows what that means. Marquette, who's kind of my sentimental. I don't have I follow stories in college a lot, but I do root for Miami in football because of my stepson did his undergrad work there before going to North Carolina to get his doctorate. I root for Marquette because when I was a kid, I loved Al McGuire. I was the biggest Marquette fan outside of Marquette, Wisconsin. Their athletic director, Bill Shaw, is going to retire and end his decade-long tenure as soon as the school names his successor. I've just been a big fan of Marquette basketball since Al McGuire. That 1977 championship. I had Butch Lee. I've interviewed on my show, speaking of college players I've had on the one-on-one show 2, 3, 4 years ago now, probably 4 years ago. Butch was a great interview. He did an interview with me while he had his wife at the emergency room. He's a character, but a great college basketball player. And one of the great college basketball tournaments of all time was that 1977 tournament. They beat the Tar Heels, kept Dean Smith. Dean Smith still hadn't won a national championship at that time after many trips to the Final Four. They won on a controversial buzzer-beating basket against NC Charlotte, which nobody knew of at the time, and Cedric Maxwell. So I became a big Marquette fan. Still followed him through the Hank Raymond years. Rick Majerus, who was a legendary coach at Utah, coached at Marquette with limited success, didn't stay long. Then they brought in guys like O'Neal. I can't think of his first name. He took down everything that ever had to do with any of the history of Marquette University. No pictures of Marquette, no pictures of Al McGuire, no pictures of anything to do with their championship season. By the way, Al McGuire famously had the number one team in the country and didn't go to the NCAA tournament, and I want to say 1970, because he didn't like his seeding. He went and won the NIT, which was still a big tournament at the time. Anyway, Kevin O'Neal, I believe. Kevin O'Neal. If you like Kevin O'Neal, you'll see, if you ever watched great documentary about two high school basketball players in Chicago, Hoop Dreams. Great documentary. He's 30 years old now. I can't believe it. Very interesting stuff. Kevin O'Neal's in it, trying to recruit one of the guards, and he did eventually go there. William Gates. But Kevin O'Neal tore down the history of Marquette, ruined the program almost. Mike Dean from Siena gets the job right here around the corner from us, and does a great job at Siena, and gets a Marquette job, and he puts all this stuff back up. First thing he did. Don't turn your back on the history of the school you take over. Kevin O'Neal, one of the biggest doofuses ever in the college sports, by the way. Ugh. What do you got here? How far does St. John's go? Yes, Pitino's still relevant. Yeah, you can see that he's still relevant in the recruits that he brings in and the transfer portal this year. Rick Pitino has still got major pull in college basketball. And he's going to put St. John's back on the map. I'm going to tell you that right now, James. This team will have every chance to win the Big East next year, and will have every chance to be a team that can go a long ways in a tournament next year. You can say what you want about Rick Pitino, the person, but Rick Pitino, the coach, is a great coach. He's won everywhere he's gone. He took BU to the tournament. He took Providence to the Final Four. He turned around a Knicks team. The only place he failed was with the Celtics. He turned around Kentucky when they were in the toilet after Coach Hall retired and Eddie Sutton came in there. Who I love Eddie Sutton. He was a great coach at Arkansas. He was a bad fit at Kentucky. A lot of bad things happened. That program was in the toilet. And Rick Pitino, in just a couple of years, turned it around and won a national championship in 3, I think. Did the same thing at Louisville. He won at Iona. So he's gone to the NCAA with BU, Providence, Kentucky, Louisville, Iona. 5 teams he's taken to the NCAA tournament. 6 teams when he gets St. John's there. Great job. He did a bad job with the Celtics. I will not argue that. He should never have taken a Celtic job. And he knows it too. He admits it now. The only NBA job he ever wanted was the Knicks. So, I mean, again, everybody needs a mulligan now and again, Paul. God, I'm catching cold and I'm not happy about it. James, did you give me a cold when you came in the room here tonight? You're all done. Oh, gosh. Is there anything else going on? I'm talked out tonight. You guys have been a great crowd tonight. I appreciate you coming in. I will give you a recommendation. It's not necessarily college related. If you want a good laugh and you're not, but if you're easily offended, don't watch this. But the Tom Brady roast on Netflix the other night, well, some of it is cringeworthy. There's a lot of funny stuff in there. If you're easily offended, please don't watch. Me, I don't get offended by anything. I'm reading a lot of stuff about Aaron Hernandez jokes that were inappropriate and Giselle jokes that were inappropriate. Man, it's humor. It's comedy. Get over it. It was hilarious. Most of it. It's 3 hours long. I still got an hour to watch. I might watch it when I get done here. James is going away. Good to have you. OCA, thank you very much for the popcorn. You guys have a great night. I'm going to wrap it up. Keith Engle. We appreciate you tuning in tonight for the college sports huddle. We'll be back next Wednesday. Will I? I think I'll be back Wednesday. We're going to start talking about a little hiatus possibly through this for a few weeks during the summer. We'll see how it goes. Right? Comedy's comedy, man. If you can't take it, turn the channel. There's 9,000 things you're going to watch on TV. Turn it off. All right, guys. Good night, Paul. Good night, everybody. Keith Engle. Brian Holloway. Fingers crossed. Friday morning, 9 a.m. One-on-one with Keith Engle. See you later. Bye-bye.